Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool, and I enjoy getting good deals at pawn shops on quality tools, probably as much as the next guy, and kind of think of it as my job sometimes to pick up those deals, so you don't have to. But I thought I'd go over a couple of the techniques that I use because a pawn shop, it's a fluid environment. It's not like walking into a big box or a retail tool store, where it is what it is. There's a lot of flexibility. And in many cases, you might be onto something that they don't know about. And that might be a tool brand, like PB Swiss. I've never encountered a PB Swiss in a pawn shop, but there's a chance it'll just get lumped in with all the rest of the no-name tools. But sometimes, especially with Snap-on, there is an awareness and generally a high market or high price market for it, even secondhand. So here's a couple of things. One, know your tools. You might recognize them a little bit more. Obviously, if you see something like this sitting in a pile of screwdrivers or the bottom of a toolbox, and there's always those toolboxes. They're sitting around full of junk tools, and everyone's going to recognize that. Even if the logo seems worn off, it's going to just scream Snap-on. Not everyone recognizes these. A lot of people do, especially the old school guys, but there are some indicators whether or not you've got a Snap-on. One of them is that it will have that kind of patent number on the back of it, and sometimes that lasts longer than the actual logo. And then sometimes you can just barely pick up a bit of the logo in a kind of a reflected light, or even just the product number. And so you have to learn what those look like. Also, there will never be chrome vanadium written on the handles. And then this one obviously has a brand new shaft, which is one of the reasons I didn't mind picking these up. But not everyone recognizes some of the older handles. So I've gotten, an older Snap-on screwdriver like this just for, pennies. And occasionally you stumble on something like this. What is this? This is actually a Snap-on screwdriver, and I have ones like this in other color patterns, and I picked this up and played around with it and thought, this is a Snap-on. I even opened the back of it and looked at the bits. When I dumped those out, the bits were actually Snap-on bits. And I thought, this is odd. There's only one marking on it. And it's right there, and I assume that might be a date code. I haven't checked. But the thing that was kind of funny about this is it was in a pile of screwdrivers. I bet I was going to pay, $1 or $2 for it. So I took it up later to the front with a few other things and asked, and they just looked at it, and I don't know, what do you give me for it, or what's it worth to you? They might not have a clue. And I said, I don't know, $1. And they said, how about $2? If I had said $3, they would have said $5. If I had said $5, they would have said $8. So there is some value in coming in first and low, because it makes it a little bit difficult if they want to jump up. No way, that's high quality. That's $10. And it's like, quality doesn't even have a name on it. Anyway, I did take it to my Snap-on dealer. He did say, yes, in fact, this is a Snap-on screwdriver. But it must have been one of the special makeups for some project or something, or military. He didn't know. But he said he probably could warranty it out if he needed to. But it definitely was a Snap-on. Anyway, I carry magnifying glass because a lot of times this one's a little easier to see. You can see it without the magnifying glass. I can detect Snap-on there. I would have thought that too by the red handles. In fact, the texture of the red handles. But some others, were a little tougher to see. This does say Snap-on. It's harder to read. In fact, it was almost impossible to read in the store even under magnification. And I've often got a magnifier, so I can try to figure out what's going on. But when I look, I can see the product number, or even the USA is a big indicator. And just the feel of it was amazing. So, it might be lumped in with the rest of the pliers, but get a good deal on it, because I'm not going to walk up to the front and say, hey, I looked really close and these are Snap-ons, how much? That changes the dynamic. It's their job to know their products. So the other day I was in a store and I saw a bunch of stuff sitting in a toolbox, and it kind of looked like this at the bottom, and I've actually started cleaning this, so it was actually worse condition. But I just moved some stuff aside and I saw these, and I just caught a glimmer of a logo on this, and I'll pull one of these off. You can see that. It's in pretty bad shape. you know, the other side's not as bad, but the side presenting was pretty messed up, and the bottom of this was all rusted, and I took it out and looked, and that's what it looked like. So this was kind of hidden. In fact, I've been cleaning it, so these had a little bit more debris on them. But anyway, I thought, well, I wouldn't mind getting this. However, it's in the junk tools, so the moment I bring it up, you know, they're going to scrutinize it. So how do you get around that? One of the ways is you have a few other things, you know, especially stuff that they might be really hoping to get rid of. So I might have this, and maybe I'll toss in some fasteners and go up to the front and say, you know, what's this stuff worth? And they might look at it. What you want to do is have something they'll scrutinize, because they're going to be doing their job, and they might say, well, you know, this is an antique. This old chisel here, you know, they might look at some of this, especially if there are a few other tools. They might wonder if there's collectible value there. You know, what's that? Maybe even throw in some non-tool stuff. And they're going to fixate on an item, you know, and it might be better than this, but gives you the idea. And they're going to say, hey, that's, you know, that's a nice antique. So this has got to be at least $10, you know, and I might be like, well, how much for the rest of this? And they might say, I don't know, $2. And it's like, oh, okay, so it's $12 for all of it, and yeah, maybe $10 for all of it. And I said, well, can I just get this for $2, and I'll think about this? And they're like, sure, because I mean, that's sort of what they told you. So I walk out with a bunch of odds and ends for a couple of bucks, including this. Now, if I had just walked up to the front and said, hey, how much is this? They would have pulled it out and looked at it and then went on eBay or however they do their pricing and say, hey, you know, those sell for like, you know, $115 new, so it's going to be, you know, $60. How's that? It's a little rough, so, you know, but it's lifetime warranty. You can get that replaced. And I look at it and think, I don't know. That's not quite what I was hoping for. Well, that's because I brought it to their attention. I did their job. I did their work and searched through all the junk tools and found a good one and brought it to their attention. Now, I might say, oh, that's too much. Never mind. Well, the next day I walk in. This is going to be behind glass in the Snap-on tools, and they're going to have a high price on it. Or I could just say, here, I will buy all this stuff. You just tell me. It's your job, you know, to figure this out. And, you know, they're looking at it probably thinking, oh, great, we get rid of that finally. You know, I don't know. You know, I'm not giving them a reason to scrutinize it. And I've got something else. Sometimes I think of it like as a decoy. Maybe I'll end up buying it anyway, but I know they're going to get stuck on this, and it's going to take, they're not going to be as worried about something, especially some old rusty, you know, hexes. Anyway, so that's one thing. I'm always polite. I've always, you know, decided sometimes if it's a great deal, you know, I'll even just buy the antique thing that caught my eye. Another aspect is they'll often talk about a cash price versus a credit price or a debit price or something, and a lot of times if you have cash, it talks. And if, let's say this was 12, and I was serious, I might say, I don't know, would you take 8 for it? Well, I know that they're going to probably go to 10. They like round numbers, and that's still a good deal for what I have in mind. However, if I start out, let's say I just find the one thing, and I start out, you know, they ask how much, and I say, I don't know, $10. And they say, wow, you know, those are Snap-ons. How about 40? And I'm thinking, well, you know, they're in rough shape. How close can you get to 15? That's about all I do on them. And they're like, ooh, you know, I don't know, 20. Okay, 20 I know is about the lowest they're going to go from the way they're talking. So then what I do is I have other things I want to supplement. Like I noticed this, you know, I do 20 on that. You want to toss in a screwdriver and maybe some old pliers. No, not the Snap-on usually. I'm just kind of sweetening the deal. And generally, once you're going to go ahead and buy something, it's easy to add little odds and ends, and that's where I look for the small stuff. The neat little odds and ends that might sell for a few bucks, the bit sets, maybe a couple of sockets, classic old wrenches that might just look more fun hanging on the refrigerator than in the toolbox. You know, maybe something, a metal or a plastic pry bar. It's in great shape. It's a useful one. Wasn't on my list, but you know, it's meaningless pretty much to them. Anyway, so that's one of the ways that I've gotten some really good deals. Of course, if it's a snap-on tool in the tool chest or in their display cabinet, I'll talk about that in another video. But there's some techniques there, depending, and also a way to kind of feel out whether or not the person that's helping you knows anything about the tools, because that can also make a difference, especially if you're buying something that might be a bit of a risk. That could be a light, a drill, any electronics. And then also, if you're buying anything, make sure that every single piece of it is, in this case, a Snap-on product. Because I have seen some where a couple of them are Snap-on and the rest are Craftsman or something like that because they've been lost or backfilled. And they'll keep the Snap-on price. But then, if you get home and scrub the dirt off and you realize, oh, it's just an SK or a Snap-on. Sorry, SK lovers. Anyway, thought that might be helpful. I do find kind of shopping pawn shops lately, it's a little rougher. There's not as much out there that's quality. And I've also noticed that there's a lot of new stuff in pawn shops, which is a whole nother video if you want to deal with that. But anyway, thought that might be helpful. And I'd love to know your tips and tricks for shopping the used market, the secondhand market. I'm certainly not as well versed as like Midwest Tool Review is. I mean, that guy, he just walks out and he comes back with more tools than I own. Anyway, let me know. And with that, Doc out.